Before voting for him, there are few things every American needs to know about Joe Biden's relationship with the Islamic regime in Iran. First, you have to go back in time to September 11, 2001. 18 terrorists carried out the most horrific attack in history on American soil. This led the U.S. to start a new war against global terrorism. According to Hushang Amir Ahmadi, who formerly advocated for the regime of mullahs in the United States, in 2002, an organization named Niac, National Iranian American Council, was founded by direct collaboration between Javad ظریف and Tarita Parsi, who later became the president of Niac. Amir Ahmadi's claim was corroborated later through a court-ordered disclosure of emails between ظریف and Tarita Parsi. It seems that one of the Niac's jobs was to create relationship between Javad ظریف and some American political figures in order to take advantage of the political gap in the U.S. They sought to echo the narrative that if America's approach towards the regime in Iran changes, then regime will reciprocate. Tarita Parsi proved to be very useful for the regime and for Javad ظریف. In several emails between the two, it's made clear that the function and the strategy of Niac was at very least to advocate for the regime in Iran, and according to ظریف himself, it was during these years that he met with Joe Biden and the two became close friends. In 2009, during the court proceeding, Niac was forced to release some of its internal documents, which proved a direct link between their organization and the regime. According to law enforcement experts, the group acted as an undeclared lobby for the Islamic Republic regime and may also be guilty of violating tax laws. Parsi also arranged meetings between ظریف and other members of Congress, two of whom were later implicated in helping the regime to evade U.S. sanctions and were sentenced to 30 months in jail. And after Washington Times ran an article on this, Arizona Senator John Cowell sent a request to the U.S. Attorney General to investigate Niac and its direct and indirect ties with the regime in Iran. However, in 2009, Joe Biden and Obama had taken office, and so of course no investigation was undertaken. Parsi visited White House 33 times during the Obama and Biden administration. Quite an accomplishment, considering that he was on the verge of being investigated for acting as a foreign enemy state lobbyist. In 2013, Javad ظریف became the new foreign minister of the regime in Iran. And in his speech to the regime's parliament, he explained how during his tenure as the regime's UN ambassador, he had established contact with anti-Bush politicians in order to exploit American political division. Sure enough, he managed to get a deal from Biden and Obama's administration called JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. How bad that agreement was is a different topic altogether. But there are two important points worth noting. First, regime would get $150 billion from the U.S., $2 billion of which was in cash. Recent allegation suggests that some of that was used to pay corrupt politicians in U.S. who helped contribute to mullahs securing their sweet deal. Second, apparently as part of the deal, 5,000 trained forces of the regime were granted U.S. green cards. These agents of theirs moved to the United States and took on guise of students, journalists, scientists, academics, businessmen and women, human rights activists, and so on. In Iran, Hassan Abbasi, a top theoretician of the regime, who calls himself the Henry Kissinger of mullahs, has openly stated in several of his speeches that the regime has planted many sleeper cells in the U.S. He says the Americans should be aware of potential destruction that can be caused by the atomic reactors in their country being blown up by the regime's operatives, who live amongst the American people and look and act as they do. What happened on 9/11 was the work of just 18 men. Only imagine what the Islamic Republic can do with thousands of their agents. Interestingly enough, in 2017, a federal court in New York found the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, liable for the 9/11 attack and ordered the regime in Iran to pay $10 billion in damages to the families of the victims. Over 18 years have now passed since Niac was first established to try to advance the illusion that if the U.S. changes its approach towards the regime regime in Iran, the regime will also reciprocate. Meanwhile, throughout this time, American soldiers have one after another been blown up to pieces by roadside bombs in Iraq and Afghanistan, which was the handiwork of Qasem Soleimani. Soleimani was taken out by the US in Iraq in 2019, and within a few weeks after his death, ظریف in his speech at the parliament proudly called Soleimani a close friend and described his relationship with him as one that was so close that their activities so intertwined that they had to meet on a weekly basis. Interestingly enough, one of the characters seen with ظریف in different occasions is a former spokesperson for Niac, Negar Mortazavi, a journalist in disguise who is always representing the regime's narrative. And unsurprisingly, she's also a major supporter of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and has even been seen in Harris's campaign. When there are so many pro-Islamic Republic regime agents in your think tanks, news agencies, or who are pretending to be human rights activists in the United States, and who even collect taxpayers' money from your government for their activities while constantly pushing the regime's narrative, you have to wonder, are they some of those very 5,000 trained sleeper cell agents that were sent to America as part of the JCPOA deal that Biden is so proud of? What conclusion are you Americans supposed to draw when Niac, the regime's alleged lobby, and its members with their seemingly endless budget are trying so hard to help Joe Biden get elected? Or did Biden ever tell his good friend Javad ظریف when he was handing him billions of dollars, "Hey Javad, can you stop blowing up our soldiers?" I guarantee you he didn't. Anytime you Americans visit Arlington National Cemetery, or when you see a veteran missing a limb, remember that Qasem Soleimani was enabled by the man whose name appears on your ballot. Yes, Joe Biden.